Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz. This is Ron's Rundown. Want to go over the MLB games scheduled for Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. If you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my daily rundown best bet in the MLB, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Tuesday in Major League Baseball. First up, we see the New York Yankees taking on the Baltimore Orioles. Nestor Cortes and Dean Kramer are the projected starters. Nestor Cortes, this season's kind of been inconsistent numbers. 3.5 ERA, not bad, but an ERA above 7 on the road. He's pitched the majority of his games at Yankee Stadium, but we saw him only go 5 innings against the Diamondbacks on the road and then 4 innings against the Guardians, giving up 7 earned runs combined in those 9 innings, 2 home runs, 8 strikeouts. Strikeout numbers this year a little bit disappointing. 32 Ks in 36 innings. You'd like to see him miss some more bats with how well the Orioles have been against left-handed pitching this year. I do worry about Cortes in this game. He struggled against the Orioles last year. Dean Kramer also was not the best against the Yankees last year. Now, he is coming off one of his best starts of the year. He had 10 strikeouts against the Los Angeles Angels, but that's the Angels. Their numbers are starting to dip quite a bit against righties. Now you're facing a Yankees team. We just saw score 36 runs on the weekend against the Brewers, and they're crushing right-handed pitching overall this season. So with the Yankees bullpen, the expected numbers aren't the best, and the Orioles, known for being a late-inning team offensively. To me, I think we see runs early and late. I think we're going to take. I'm going to take the over here in the Yankees-Orioles ballgame. Next up, we see the Colorado Rockies taking on the Miami Marlins. We're going to see Ryan Feltner for Colorado, no official starter for the Marlins. The Rockies have been kind of all over the place recently. They played 7 games at home at Coors Field, and then they had a day off between the Coors Field homestand and then the game in Mexico City, which we know the elevation there. It's the reason why the total was at 16.5 runs, even steeper than in Coors Field. So the Rockies are playing all of these different types of altitudes, and now they get one more day off on Monday before this series in Miami. To me, I do expect some sluggish bats for the Rockies, who are already not really one of the better offensive teams in baseball. And Ryan Feltner, he struggled actually more so on the road than at Coors Field. He's got that ERA at 6.46 in his road starts this year. Even his last game, where you could see some signs of improvement, 10 base hits given up. He's given up now 19 base hits in his last 9 1/3 innings. So while the Marlins offensively have not been great this year, I actually think this is a pretty good matchup for him against Feltner and a pretty weak Rockies bullpen. So to me, I think it's going to be a tough series for Colorado, and I like the Marlins in this first game on the money line. Next up, we see the Kansas City Royals taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Cole Ragans and Jose Barrios are your projected starters. 2 great starting pitching options on the mound in this one, and because of that, the total's set pretty low, but honestly, I think there's some value on the over in this game, and you could tell, that was a game that was cut short to rain. It was a 2-1 final score between these starting pitchers, and you could tell, though, both lineups were starting to get to the opposition in terms of starter. And Jose Barrios finished with only 1 strikeout in 5 innings of work. He gave up a home run, 3 walks to go with it. Ragans also had 3 walks given up, and the Blue Jays have crushed lefties this year. They have not been great against righties, but their numbers against lefties, some of the best in baseball. And Ragans, I would say it's been a slow start to him this year. Before that game against Toronto, he gave up 7 earned runs and 9 base hits against the Orioles. Jose Barrios, I mentioned, really, great start to the season, but this is a tough Royals lineup. They are limiting strikeouts in a big way against right-handed pitching. They have good power numbers. Salvador Perez near the top of the league in terms of batting average right now. So this is a dangerous lineup. I think both lineups have a big day here. Don't love either of these bullpens, so I'm going to go with the over here in Royals Blue Jays. Next up, we see the Chicago Cubs taking on the New York Mets. Javier Assad and Sean Manaea are the starters. Sean Manaea not really in the best of form right now. Even when he's pitching well in terms of not giving up runs, he's still putting up a lot of base runners. He's had at least 3 walks in each of his last 3 starts. And that one game against the Royals on April 13th, it was 6 earned runs given up. He was only able to go 5 innings against the Dodgers, only 4 2/3 against the Giants. So, the pitch counts are going way up in his starts early, and the Cubs are a pretty patient lineup against lefties, but beyond that, they're number 2 in baseball in OPS and number 1 in isolated power against lefties this year. So I think it's a tough matchup for Manaea, and Javier Assad, with how well he's pitching, right around a strikeout per inning, keeping the ball on the ground, not giving up too many home runs. He's faced a pretty weak schedule, but I still think he's the better option in this game by a pretty significant margin. So I'm going to take the Chicago Cubs in this game on the money line. Next up, we see the San Francisco Giants taking on the Boston Red Sox. We're going to see Logan Webb and Cooper Criswell as the projected starters. Logan Webb has been in good form right now, but we've seen him, rather inconsistent this year and in spring training. And When we've seen him struggle, it's been because he hasn't been able to keep the ball on the ground. And, recently he's been pitching at Oracle Park, very pitcher-friendly ballpark, 3 of his last 4 games there, and he's faced a couple of lineups like the Diamondbacks who keep the ball on the ground quite a bit offensively. He's pitched well against those teams. He doesn't really miss a lot of bats. He doesn't earn a lot of strikeouts, but if he keeps the ball on the ground, his defense usually can help him out. But now you're at Fenway Park, one of the more hitter-friendly ballparks in Major League Baseball, and you're facing a Red Sox lineup that may not have the best numbers against righties per se, but when you look at their ground ball percentage, only at 41%, that's the 5th lowest in Major League Baseball. To me, this is a tough matchup for Logan Webb, a really tough one. And, Cooper Criswell, not my favorite starting pitching option to back. I don't expect him to pitch deep into this ballgame, but you know what? He went 5 innings of shutout ball against the Guardians, a very tough lineup in his last game. The Red Sox pitching staff as a whole has really stepped it up, with these injuries to still have one of the best team ERAs in the league. I'm going to go with the Boston Red Sox on the money line in this one. Next up, we see the Minnesota Twins taking on the Chicago White Sox. Simeon Woods Richardson takes on Michael Soroka in this one. Mike Soroka, an ERA just below 7 on the year. I would say his last game wasn't his worst. He went 5 innings, a 2-run ball against these Minnesota Twins, but A, it wasn't enough for a win or a run line cover. It was still a 6-3 Twins victory. And B, he gave up 2 home runs, only had 1 strikeout in those 5 innings, so really wasn't the sharpest of outings. He's given up a lot of sharp contact this year, 7 home runs in 29 innings with only 13 strikeouts and 17 walks to go with it. So he's missing inside the zone, he's missing outside the zone. He has more walks than strikeouts. And to me, with the Twins offense, really turning it on in the last week and a half, I got to go with Minnesota in this game. Even though the White Sox had an impressive weekend against Tampa Bay, I think Woods Richardson's a much better option. And if this is a close game late, which I don't expect it will be, but if it is, the Twins have the much better bullpen. So I'm going to go with the Twins here and lay the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. Tyler Alexander and Freddie Peralta are your starters. I don't love Tyler Alexander as a starting pitching option because I do think the second and third time around the order is when teams really going to start to get to him, just like many starting pitchers, but especially a starter like Alexander. And we saw that in that game, last game against the Detroit Tigers, and it's why Kevin Cash opted to go with an opener before Alexander to try to limit the amount of times that the Tigers faced him. And, they still got to him the second time around the order. They found 2 runs in the middle innings and were able to, tie that ball game up. But now you're facing the Brewers here. I think at least in the first 5 innings, Alexander will pitch pretty well because this is a Brewers lineup that has not hit lefties very well this year, really the last couple of years overall. They started the season fine, but now you see them ranked 21st in isolated power, 28th in team OPS. They have a 28.2% strikeout rate. So I think Alexander does fine in the first 4 to 5 innings. Freddie Peralta, I think he bounces back after his worst start of the season. He's still missing a ton of bats this year. He's pitching well overall. It was still a game where the Brewers went on to win last time out against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And like I said, now pitching back at home is only, he's pitched mostly on the road this year, but back at home, I think he pitches well. I'm going to go with the under in the first 5 innings between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Milwaukee Brewers. Next up, we see the Washington Nationals taking on the Texas Rangers. Mackenzie Gore and John Gray are your starters. Now, the Texas Rangers are improving against lefties. They started really slow. Now we see them right around league average in OPS and isolated power, but that strikeout rate is still at 26.2%. The walk rate, one of the lowest in the league. And Mackenzie Gore, while he has had a tendency of missing down the heart of the plate a few times with a few mistake pitches, and teams have been able to take advantage of that, I still think he's a solid starting pitching option overall. And we saw him get out of a lot of jams in that last game against the Dodgers. Very tough lineup. He's faced a tough schedule. The Pirates, Phillies, A's, Astros, and Dodgers are all solid teams against left-handed pitching. So now, it doesn't get too much easier here on the road against the Rangers, but I don't think it's anything that Gore hasn't seen before. I think he pitches pretty well in this one. John Gray, while he's got that 2.92 ERA, and it looks great on paper, he's got that expected ERA of 5.33 for a reason. He's given up a lot of sharp contact. We saw in that last game against Seattle. He went 4 2/3 innings, 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts. Looks great on paper. However, 7 base hits to go with it and a walk. He's given up a lot of sharp contact, and the Nationals can take advantage of that. This is an underrated lineup against righties. Top 15 in both OPS and isolated power, low strikeout rate to go with it. And when it comes to the bullpens, I think the Nationals have the big advantage there. Even though their bullpen's starting to slip a little bit, I still think it's a better option so far in terms of the expected numbers, the ERA. So I'm going to go with the Washington Nationals on the plus 1.5 runs and the money line in this one. Next up, we see the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Houston Astros. Carlos Carrasco and Hunter Brown are the starters. I don't love this matchup for Carlos Carrasco. I do think that the Astros will be able to find some runs on him. We saw him give up 5 earned that last game against Boston, but in his defense, it was also the second straight start against the same exact lineup. He faced the Red Sox on April 18th and pitched well against them. It's never easy facing the same lineup twice in the same week, so I think he'll be a bit better here. I still think the Astros get to him, but I also think the Guardians get to Hunter Brown, and if this is a close game late, a competitive game, you got to give the advantage to the Guardians. I mean, their bullpen's been one of the best in the league, and the Astros have been one of the worst. They've been taking themselves out of games left and right this year. While it's getting a bit better, and we saw them play well this weekend, I still don't have a lot of faith in the Astros at this kind of price. I mean, we know the Guardians are a team that does the little things right. They play a small ball style of baseball. And, honestly, this weekend against Atlanta, they did the little things wrong, and that's what really cost them in that game on Sunday especially. I think they had 4 different guys get picked off on the base pads, caught stealing, picked off. Not something you're used to seeing. Stephen Kwan got picked off twice. I think we see Cleveland sharpen it up quite a bit in this game and in this series. This is an important series. I'm going to go with the Guardians on the money line in this one. Next up, we see the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the Los Angeles Angels. We're going to see Tyler Anderson and Spencer Turnbull as the starters. 2 starting pitchers with sub-2 ERAs. Anderson was sharp in spring training, carried it over to the regular season. Same thing for Turnbull. He really won that spot in the rotation, with a strong spring showing. But in this spot, I got to trust the Phillies lineup and bullpen a lot more. And the Phillies were a team the last few years hit lefties very well. They had a slow start to this year, but now we find them in the top 10 in team OPS against lefties with a high walk rate. Anderson's last start against the Orioles was a solid one, but it's still 4 walks given up, only 5 innings to go with it. I think the Phillies get to him early. That control's been off 3 walks or more in his last 3 games. So I think the Phillies get to him. Even if they don't, this Angels bullpen we know for the last decade has really struggled. And Spencer Turnbull, a sub-1 ERA on the road this season, even at Great American Ballpark in his last game. 5 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts, gave his team a chance to win. They lost that one, but they've won a majority of his starts this year. And I'm going to go with the Phillies in this game on the money line. Next up, we see the Atlanta Braves taking on the Seattle Mariners. Reynaldo Lopez and Luis Castillo are your starters. Overall, Luis Castillo's got great numbers at T-Mobile Park in 153 1/3 innings, a 2.99 ERA, and 193 strikeouts. However, recently, a little bit towards last year and so far this year, Castillo did struggle at T-Mobile Park, and it's a little bit surprising because T-Mobile Park's a very pitcher-friendly ballpark. And now you're facing the Atlanta Braves. There's no doubt about it that Castillo is pitching his best baseball right now. He struggled a bit in spring and in the beginning of the season, and now he's in great form. He's given up 2 earned runs or fewer in his last 3 starts. But I do have a little bit of a worry that he gives up some runs and base runners early on in this game against such a potent lineup in the Atlanta Braves. If not the Dodgers, it's the Braves in terms of number 1 lineup against right-handed pitching this year. Lopez is going to regress a bit just naturally. He's got a sub-1 ERA right now, but he's pitching well. He's missing bats. He's keeping the ball on the ground. This is a tough game for me. Both solid bullpens, but I'm going to lean towards the better lineup here in the Atlanta Braves. We're getting a pretty good price with them. As much as I maybe want to take the Mariners, I just think that the Braves get to Castillo early in this one. He still gave up 2 home runs in that last game against Texas, so he's given up a lot of sharp contact, and I'm going to go with the Braves in this one. Next up, it's the Cincinnati Reds taking on the San Diego Padres. Nick Martinez and Johnny Brito. It looks like for San Diego, no official starter. Brito was listed on CBS Sports, so he could very well be the starter. Could be a bullpen game for the Friars. But I've mentioned over and over again, I don't consider Nick Martinez a viable starting pitching option at the major league level for most rotations. And Nick Martinez last game against the Phillies, he went 6 innings, but he gave up 5 earned runs and 11 base hits. He's facing his former team here. I do expect him to struggle here. And Johnny Brito, if he is going to be the starter here, I don't love his chances either against this solid Reds lineup. I think we see a lot of runs in this game. I'm going to go with the over in Cincinnati, San Diego. Next up, we see the Arizona Diamondbacks taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Landon Knack and Jordan Montgomery are your starters. Interesting game here. Both guys, not a lot, the very small sample size because they've only pitched 2 games to start the season. Landon Knack faced the Nationals twice, and he had pretty good numbers through those starts. It's never easy facing the same lineup twice, and for Knack to have a sub-4 ERA right now against a solid Nationals lineup, we've talked about pretty good numbers against righties. I would say a good start to the year for him. But when you look at the per nines, the strikeouts per 9, home runs, walks, they are not the best right now, and he gave up a home run in each of those first 2 games. And when you look at the expected numbers, a 4.25 expected ERA, 4.57 xFIP, FIP in the 5s, 5.27. They're not the best. I do expect regression going forward for Knack. And Jordan Montgomery on the other side, he didn't have a spring training and a very typical offseason because he signed late with Arizona. And, he's so far pitched well for the Diamondbacks. 7 innings, 3 runs his last game against St. Louis. It's a tougher matchup, definitely the toughest matchup of the season so far for Montgomery, but you're facing a Dodgers team that we know has had much better numbers against righties than lefties to start the year. I think Montgomery pitches pretty well, and I think there's value with Arizona in a game like this, so I'm going to lean towards the Diamondbacks on the money line at home. And the final game we're going to talk about for the Tuesday card of Major League Baseball, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on the Oakland Athletics. Mitch Keller and Alex Wood are your projected starters. I don't love the current form that Mitch Keller is in. He struggled on the road last year, so far this season, but I think he's a better option. The Pirates have hit lefties very well. Alex Wood, ERA just below 7. The expected numbers aren't the best. And while his last game, he only gave up 1 run in 5 2/3, that was against the Yankees team. It struggles against lefties, and it still was 8 base hits in that game. So a lot of base runners. I can't trust him in this game. I think Keller is the better option to start this one. I think the Pirates get on the board early. Maybe you take Pittsburgh in the first 5 innings because I do think the A's have the better bullpen, but I don't think it's by enough for me to want to take Oakland in the full game. So I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Pirates in the full game on the money line. And that's it. Those are the games for Tuesday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. But don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Romanelli. Good luck.